It's Tuesday, October 1st, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we get updates on promotions at the Barnstable Police Department and learn more about education funding from the state. Now, for a look at municipal and legislative notes. The town of Barnstable invites Barnstable residents, both year-round and seasonal, and other local stakeholders, such as business owners, to share their opinions regarding short-term rentals through an online survey. The survey seeks input from residents' personal experience with short-term rentals, thoughts about potential regulations, and opinions on the benefits and drawbacks to our community. Open through November 1st, the survey should take less than 5 minutes, and responses are confidential and will be used for research purposes to assist in policy conversations about short-term rentals in the town of Barnstable. The survey can be found on the town's website, www.townofbarnstable.us. A total of 7 Barnstable police officers were promoted this past Thursday, 2 sergeants to the rank of lieutenant and 5 patrol officers to the rank of sergeant. Chief Sonnabend joins us with an in-depth look on the process these officers went through for promotion. You can watch the ceremony on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Barnstable Channel 18. Promotions at Barnstable Police Department. With me today, Chief Sonnabend.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Wonderful weather we're having.
Oh, absolutely.
Where's fall?
Fall, it's second summer, local summer,
Yeah,
right?
Indian summer.
Yeah.
Second summer. I like that. Second summer. Shoulder season, second summer.
Exactly.
Hey.
And
Good.
absolutely fabulous. All this week will be nice. Last week for the promotion ceremony, you
Beautiful.
promoted a
Cartload?
a cartload, a boatload. 7 individuals were promoted this past week. Tell us a little bit about the process of getting promotions. You're a civil service organization, so how does that happen? You went lieutenants and sergeants.
Yep. Well, it's basically the same thing. It's because we are a civil service agency. There is a test. Civil service gives you the option. You can either have a written exam or a combination written exam and assessment center. Traditionally, we've done the written exam for all the ranks, but over the years, like the chiefs has gone to just an assessment center. The deputy chiefs has gone to an assessment center, and but the lower ranks have still stayed a written exam. What the civil service will do, they'll have you take the written exam first, and if you pass that, then you go on to an assessment center. So they get some questions and some stuff like that, some practical exercises to work through. So it's not just evaluating how good you do on a written exam, but how well you can speak to others, solve problems, and things like that. So what we did for this is they had the written exam that they had already done. So we got them all together. We have to do interviews. We have a policy that we do interviews and whatnot. So we had an outside company come in and do some interviews and do a little exercises with the groups to have them do a little bit of problem solving and see where they get. Because a lot of times the downfall of a written exam is, it assesses how well you memorize some material and you can answer A, B, or C, but it doesn't really get to the root of, well, why did you get that answer? Because sometimes how people get to an answer is just as important as the answer they come up with. So a nice little couple exercises are nice to evaluate what you got going on and see what you're going. But because, like I said, because we are civil service, it's really test driven. So you could, just come into work every day, take the test, score really well, and you go to the top of the list. So there's a bunch of procedures we got to go through to try and find the best candidates. But we still are bound by rules as to who you can pick and when, and it's kind of like our hiring process, bypasses and things like that. Non-civil service departments have it a little bit different. They can structure it to whatever whatever fits their community a little bit, whatever fits their department and their needs. But we are civil service, and because of that, just like our new hire exams, the tests for sergeants, lieutenants, and most of those ranks are all every 2 years. So that list will stay active for 2 years, and I think the one the sergeants are on runs till 2021, and the one the lieutenants are on expires this coming up February. So there'll be a new exam. They just had the new exam a couple of days over the weekend.
All right. So you had 5 new sergeants promoted. What's the difference in their duties from a patrol person to a sergeant? Is it more supervisory now? Is it a specific division that they're actually controlling, or is it just that they're the person that would be in charge at a specific event or something like that?
Well, the way we work is the lieutenants are in charge of the shifts.
Okay.
They have their shift commander. They have overall charge of the shift. But you only have one lieutenant assigned to a shift, so they're not there every day. as much as we'd like them to be there every day all the time, they can't be there every day. So the sergeants fill in, the senior sergeant will be the, step in for the lieutenant when the lieutenant is off or whatever, and runs the shift for a day. The lieutenant's got overall oversight of the shift, but then the sergeant will take control of that shift for the day. Usually we got 2 sergeants working at least, if not a sergeant, a lieutenant, then it'll be a sergeant. We staff the shifts. 1 sergeant will be outside on the road as the patrol supervisor. 1 sergeant will be inside as what we call the watch commander, and deals with people that come into the station, oversees dispatch, and takes care of the booking and the prisoners and whatever administrative duties need to be done that day on the shift, and kind of keeps track of everything, keeps everybody informed. But realistically, when we're not around, when I'm not around or the deputy chiefs aren't around, the sergeants, whoever's there that day, whatever supervisor they're kind of like the de facto chief. So you got to have a lot of trust in the people that are out there running your shifts, because they really step in. They're representing you, and they're representing the whole department and running everything. So I think that what we have was a real good core of supervisors, and they do an excellent job. But to get back to the first part of your question, what do they do and what are their duties every day? And to me, the most important rank in any agency, especially ours, bigger agency like ours, is that sergeant rank, because they are, that bridge between me and the patrol. They're the ones. I can't be everywhere every day. They're the ones that talk to the patrolmen every day. They're there. They know what the conditions are. Patrol has an issue, feeds it to the sergeant. It comes up to me. We develop in programs. We get the sergeants involved, and they feed it down to patrol. So a sergeant rank is a really key to the overall health and welfare of the agency itself. They are where the rubber meets the road. Key to any organization in my eyes.
Right. And then 2 lieutenants. So again, probably somewhat similar to that same sergeant piece, but a little bit of a higher level, maybe more on the side of helping you create policy and things like that, rather than delivering the policy.
Exactly. Because the way patrol works, patrol is 90% of everything we do. So all these promotions, these people are all going to patrol. Because wherever we are, whatever we're doing, that is the main mission of the police department, providing that patrol service, answering that 911, and making sure that gets done. So no matter where you are in our building, you have to have an understanding of how that works. And I think it's imperative that supervisors spend time down on patrol, because eventually you're going to get to a point where you're going to come up with some great policy that you really like, but you got to have an understanding of how that affects people everywhere else in the agency. Hey, does this really work? Is this practical? You still have to have conversations with people and make sure that what you're doing is practical, but you also have to have a little bit of basis of knowledge of like, well, I've been there, and that really doesn't sound like such a good idea to me. So you got to have that practicality. But yeah, because of the way we are, lieutenants do maintain, a shift lieutenant does maintain a strong bond to their officers and the people that are assigned to them on their shifts. Not as strong as the sergeants, because the sergeants are there every day and there's more of them. They get more contact. But the lieutenants do still have a strong bond with the people they work with, and they should, because in the end, they got to represent them to me. We got to make things work for them and make sure everything works in the right way. But lieutenants do have a little bit more of an administrative function too, because now you're trying to get them involved in some staff functions, because they need to know administratively what they can do, how they can do it, how does the budget work, and how do my choices, affect the department's budget, or how things just work above where I am today. So they have to kind of have an eye a little bit higher while keeping their feet in the ground and down on patrol. So, but then it's like anywhere else, it's communication. I gotta give them enough information to trust that they're going to make the right decisions that affect us all overall in the right way.
All right. And what I noticed in most of the bios of the sergeants and lieutenants is the amount of education that these folks put in addition to their day job, right? They've got masters, and they're, and they're the masters in all sorts of different types of law enforcement topics. Speak to a little bit about how they balance that. I mean, it just, these master's programs and some of these bachelor programs that these guys are going through is not necessarily easy to do after an 8-hour shift on the road.
And throwing kids and other things and that you have families, going on. Right? Yeah, family life and everything. But I think that's a credit to their families too, because like I said, when we were talking at the promotions, these people didn't get there to where they are themselves. They got there because other people made sacrifices to allow them to go to school or to work an extra shift or to pursue something else, like be a detective or something else, in order to fulfill their dreams and chart the course they saw towards promotion. So they really depended on the people around them, the people they work with, the people at home, and their friends that have really helped them get through this. And I think that's really important, because without that help, you're right, it would have been a difficult course to chart, maybe impossible to get all that done. But it speaks to their motivation. They're out there, they see that, hey, police promotions are a competitive process, and when it comes down to different things, you want to make sure maybe you get that one little extra bit. But also, getting out there and getting some education and reading on a daily basis, whatever it is, keep your mental acuity going.
Right.
Really helps. Makes your job easier. It makes you more well-rounded. So
right.
it's really it's key. So it is
Right.
good.
Right. And we'll close with this. Please name the officers that were promoted.
All right, we got Lieutenant Gretchen Allen, Lieutenant Jennifer Ellis, we got Sergeant Megan Cunningham, Sergeant Matt Blondin, Sergeant Joseph Green, Sergeant Nathan St. Onge, and I'm missing one off the top of my head. Kevin Fulham, Sergeant Kevin Fulham. So we're going to be looking probably for a canine officer coming up here pretty shortly too. So.
Yeah, I asked if Vonnie was getting promoted. He said no.
No, she's not getting. She's getting an extra biscuit though.
Extra biscuit.
Sergeants can afford more biscuits.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much, Chief.
Have a great day.
Senator Julian Cyr joins us in studio with news about additional funds for education coming to the Cape and Islands. Beacon Hill is back in session, and it's a full slate of activities for September and October. With me today, Senator Julian Cyr. So much going on, right?
Absolutely. First of all, happy local summer.
I know,
It's
right?
Still, we just had a beautiful weekend, yeah, gosh, just enjoy every bit of it. But we're back in session, and big things are happening. So I sit on the Education Committee. I'm the only member of the Cape and Islands delegation on that committee. We've been working for months on a compromise looking at the Chapter 70 funding formula. This is how the state funds public education, K through 12 education. There was something several years ago called the Foundation Budget Review Commission. Foundation budget's essentially how we calculate who gets what. There was a series of recommendations, and that has prompted us to do work on this piece of legislation, which is arguably the most significant we've seen since the early 90s when education reform was passed. For me, as someone I was a product of that education reform. I was going through elementary school and middle and high school when we made those investments. So here's what this is. This is a $1.4 billion investment in K through 12 public education over the next 7 years. We are fully funding the Foundation Budget Review Commission's recommendations. So this is around supports for healthcare costs, English language learners, special education costs, other liabilities that school districts have. But we actually are going further. And we're starting with supports for low-income students. Under the old plan, students were only counted as low income up to 130% of the federal poverty limit, or poverty level, excuse me. Under this bill, we go to 180%. We very much increase the supports for English language learning students, and we make sure the incentives start currently. If you are an English language student, we give you more money if you're an English language student who's in elementary school versus someone who's in high school. If you're someone who's coming in and you're in first or second grade, you actually have the ability to learn language a lot quicker. Right. So we're inverting that. There's a whole host of things in here. I'm glad to walk you through more of it. Right. This means really big things, especially for the town of Barnstable, which has a number of low-income students and has a number of English language students. This is going to mean big things for Barnstable. We're probably going to see a pretty significant increase. We already saw a very significant increase in the FY20 budget for Barnstable, nearly an additional $1 million that came just to Barnstable because of these investments. This is going to be continuing. So the bill was put out from committee. We're going to be taking it up in the Senate in the coming weeks, and it means a whole host of big things.
Okay, so I know just from our conversations with the superintendent that English learners are actually the fastest growing segment, well over 10% in the town of Barnstable, and just one of our elementary schools, Hyannis West, has 40% of
Yep.
their population that are English learners. So when we talk about this as per student, translate that into something that's tangible for the resident to understand that money. You can talk the dollars, but
Yeah.
we look at that. Is that more teachers? Is it more supplemental types of things, classes? Is it more textbooks?
Yeah. Well, we leave it up to the school districts largely
Right.
how to make these investments. There are some important accountability metrics here,
Right.
but we're not trying to actually add too many more requirements
Right.
onto schools. I think the conventional wisdom, I think, is that we've gone too far in that. So yeah, it supports for, it's basically saying to the school districts, look, we know it's going to cost more money to educate someone who's an English language learner than not. We know that it actually costs more money to provide equitable education for low-income students than versus students who have more resources at home and in their community. So that's what we're trying to acknowledge here. It's going to mean a pretty significant increase for this town. It's going to mean a pretty significant increase for the Dennis-Yarmouth district as well, which they need some help as well. And this is something we've been working on for months, actually. In the early summer, Superintendent Meg Mayo Brown convened a group of educators and parents from across the region. We met at Barnstable High School talking about these issues. Senator Jason Lewis, who's the Senate chair of the Education Committee, came down, made a presentation, got a lot of feedback. But essentially what this bill is aiming to do is say, no matter where you live in the Commonwealth, you're going to have an equitable education, right? So whether you live in Wellesley or in Chelsea, right, we're going to provide an equitable education. We're currently not doing that, and we're really leaving a lot of children behind, and that's the case here on Cape Cod as well. What this bill also does, a few other important things. The special education support is enhanced. Currently, there's something called the Special Education Circuit Breaker. This provides reimbursement up to 70% of special ed costs. It only included the instruction. It never included transportation. Under this bill, we include transportation. That is huge for Cape Towns. We also have a commission that looks at the needs of rural schools and school districts that have declining enrollment. That's not as big of a concern in Barnstable, but it's a big concern in my neck of the woods.
Sure.
On the Outer Cape, it's a big concern on the islands. And then we also are putting in place some new metrics to evaluate school districts, to make sure there's a little more accountability. And what I'm really excited about is there's also a pretty rapid study to really look at how the formula is calculated, how we calculate the local contribution, because the challenge we've always had is the current formula takes into account property values. Our property values are far inflated over what our income is, right? There's a disconnect there because of our second and third home market. So I'm excited for that part of this bill as well, because I think it'll further help Cape Cod get our fair share. But this is a very big deal, $1.4 billion over the next 7 years. We also lift the cap for the Mass School Building Authority, which we've got important projects coming in the pipeline here in our communities for schools. That means more money for towns to either renovate schools or to build new schools. Public education, look, this is the best investment we can make. I'm someone who's a product of an amazing public school education in K through 12, and I think I'm really proud to be part of this initiative and this process. We're going to take up this bill. It's going to pass. We've got a little more negotiating to do, but it's a big deal, and it's going to really help some of the neediest families and kids on Cape Cod, and I'm really proud of that.
All right. So you also mentioned healthcare. Where does that fit in? Is that to maybe help towns with the rising costs? Because
Yes.
as everyone knows, that municipalities are facing that cost year in and year out of rising healthcare for their workforce.
Exactly. So the existing formula never took into account how astronomically quickly health insurance costs would rise. This is health insurance for workforce. So the bill does that. It actually is much more honest about the true cost to the district.
Okay.
There's
Fantastic.
also money in there to we expand the amount of resources that go to guidance counselors and social emotional learning and mental health. This is increasingly a really big need in our schools, and the formula currently just doesn't really account for that need. We're going to increase funding under that into this bill through
and
that.
social emotional learning, again, talking to Gina Hurley from the Barnstable school system, they're starting to get the data in for this initiative of really taking children from, basically kindergarten right up through high school and having them understand the social part and the emotional part of growing and learning at the same time. It's a great, fantastic work.
Well, and it's essential, right? If you're
Right.
coming to school and you're dealing with a whole host of anxiety or depression or challenges or fears, just like you're not going to be able to learn well if you didn't have breakfast that morning.
Right.
If you're dealing with that stuff, you're not going to be as successful. And so I think I'm really proud that we're also looking at those issues too, because I think they really matter.
Okay. I know you have other things that are
Yeah.
definitely to talk about. We could talk about this all day, and maybe that'll be a long-form interview that we sit down and really
Yes,
once it's
sink our
passed.
teeth into this. We'll get the numbers. My sense is Barnstable is going to see a pretty significant increase in the reimbursement we receive, and that's going to mean really good things for folks here.
Fantastic. What else you got there?
So, really important. We always are talking about PFAS, and this, of course, is
All day long.
all day long, all day long PFAS. There is an effort underway. We have a supplemental budget in front of us that the governor filed. He proposes a number of investments financially in this. I'm supportive of that effort. And what we're trying to do is to take the bill on PFAS. I filed a bill with Representative Kate Hogan, who represents Stowe, sort of like central northern Massachusetts, to have a task force to us to really look at this issue. We're now trying to get that done in the supplemental budget. So stay tuned on that, but we're on PFAS. And then continuing the work, as you know, I'm the Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Mental Health, Substance Abuse, and Recovery. We just had a hearing on highly addictive drugs and benzos, which is something there's a lot of concern about. We've had 2 hearings since Labor Day. We got a few more hearings coming up, trying to really advance that work. And then we're really trying to look more broadly at mental health. I don't call it a mental health system because I think we actually don't have a system implies a connectivity and coordination. We've got the component parts, and so we're trying to figure out, all right, how do you really transform mental health and make sure that there's true parity between medical, surgical care, and behavioral health, mental health. So more to come on that.
Okay.
And then just want to remind folks as well, we have had an ongoing public health. We've had an ongoing public health, I don't want to say crisis, but an issue of concern related to Eastern equine encephalitis, which we have been seeing here on Cape Cod.
Another one this past week in
I think 9 folks actually, unfortunately, have been infected with triple E in Massachusetts. The nights are getting colder, which is good. The risk is diminishing, but there still is risk. So really encourage folks to reach out to your local health department, take certain precautions. We're not out of the woods yet, but this is a significant issue, and one given the number of triple E positive mosquitoes we've seen on the Cape from Mashpee to Truro. Really urge people to be vigilant about this.
Right, and we know even from Gabrielle Sokolowski, who is the mosquito control here in the Barnstable County, just empty the standing water, folks.
Yeah.
It's really a little bit as simple as that, as if you have containers, your neighbors have containers, little pools. Nobody's in the pool. Well, they were in the pool this weekend, but maybe not for the rest of the week. But
the water's
the
still
kiddie
warm.
pools and things like that. Really, and be vigilant while you're out there. Wear protective sprays and clothing.
Fortunately, we're getting cooler nights, and that's going to help.
Right.
But we're not out of the woods yet.
Excellent.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Always a
Julian.
pleasure, Paula. Thank you.
Take care. Up next, things to do, places to go, and people to meet. Steep Science Day is this Wednesday, October 2nd, from 12 p.m. here at the Barnstable Town Hall, second floor hearing room. Members of the Steep Superfund Research Program Center will be back on the Cape to discuss the science of hazardous chemicals called PFAS and their occurrence in U.S. drinking water supplies, including on Cape Cod. The program will include project updates from the STEEP team and a presentation on preliminary findings from the STEEP private wells study on the Cape. The event is free. For more information about STEEP, visit web.uri.edu/STEEP. Comments, suggestions, accolades, connect with us on Facebook, email us, or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works for you. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.